The game of Garden Tales has always received a really good player impression, and the ratings for the game has always been above 4 stars for most of the different versions across JP, CN, global as well as Korean server. However, just recently, something major happened and that led to a review bombing on the Garden Tales Frontier, which is the Korean server of the game. So what transpired behind the scenes and what led to this public outrage in the Korean player base? Let us find out in today's video and see whether or not it will be an issue for us. And just a few days back, together with the release of Hana's patch note, we also received a revision of the illustration of two characters, specifically Scientist Sohee as well as Demon Queen Lilith. So basically they're covering up the boobas of the characters and making them less sexy in the process. So the reasoning behind is also explained in this article. In the market, the recommendation for correction of the illustration of Scientist Sohee and Demon Lord Lilith is in progress. So there will be some modifications, and if you do not comply with the market correction recommendation, problems such as the registered app being deleted from the market will occur. Therefore, we ask for your understanding that the illustration will be revised in accordance with the market's recommendation. So from this translation from the Korean article, we can see that they make some changes to Lilith as well as Sohee due to some market regulations. So I assume this market regulation applies more so to the global server as well as the China server. And I doubt this change has anything to do with the JP server because they have their own sets of illustrations. And in most cases, the JP characters, they are way more sexy than the global standards. So I think it doesn't apply that much to the JP server. So we are assuming that the topic of discussion is the possibility of app removal due to over sexified characters in the global server as well as the China server. And this is not really the main issue, right? Don't think of this as the horny players just wanting to see Lilith as well as Sohee in skimpy outfits. That's why they started to review bomb the game. So I personally feel that there are a lot of problems leading up to this saga, and prior to this illustration change, there were a lot of updates which were kind of lackluster in terms of what they try to achieve. As an avid player of the game as well as a regular content creator doing this game on a daily basis, I can feel the reasoning behind some of these complaints within the review, and I'm just going to talk about it briefly based on my personal take and whether or not I'm really affected by this illustration change and what's my take on this whole situation. And I think the first main issue is due to how the game is actually selling their characters. So it has been quite a while since a male character, and yes, Kamel is a male character, but Kamel was after a 7 to 8 months wait after Garam. So in between Garam and Kamel, there were no male characters, and if you guys look at the character pool right now, there are just tons of female characters. So in a way, Garden Tales has been marketed to sell their characters by designing them to be female. And this naturally led to a bunch of players investing in their units for their very sexy character designs or their cute character designs. So this is not an issue between Garden Tales because many of the other gacha games, they actually do the same thing. They just design really attractive female characters, slap them with really good stats, and then they sell it to the players to actually invest in them. So I personally have no issue with that. I think female characters are really nice to have and they are very aesthetically pleasing, so it's good for the eye for myself. And I think with regards to the illustration change, I personally feel that the one for Lilith could be justified, but the one for Sohee is slightly not justified in my opinion, because Sohee is a beach character and she's wearing a bikini. So usually bikinis are really sexy and that's just how the bikini look, and I think this doesn't really make her overly sexy because you don't go to the beach and you tell a female wearing a bikini that, hey, you're overly sexy, right? So to cater to the theme of her coming from the beach, right, she's scientist on the beach, wearing a white bikini that's slightly exposing doesn't pose a serious issue. For Lilith's side, I think you can actually justify it in a sense that, yeah, she's a queen and she just needs to be elegant, right? She don't need to be overly sexy, and she just covered it by a bit, so it doesn't really affect her elegance or her design as a whole in general. However, if the change is really due to market legislations, then I think it's really justified, because if they don't change the design, they can't really sell the design to other countries, and that could affect their overall performance, right? But I think there's a way to fix this, because I don't think this legislation applies to all the different servers. I'm not too sure about that, but you don't have to change the character illustration across all the different servers, right? You can keep it the same for your Korean audience if they really like it. Unless it's a problem even within the Korean server itself, then I think it's totally justifiable to change it. And I can understand the public outrage because, why are you unsexifying my sexy characters? And sometimes some people just invest in them because they just like the bikinis or they just like the boobas, and they're just super unhappy about it. So that's one thing that led to it. But honestly speaking, I don't think it's just because of this issue that created this review bombing. But rather, the next point which I want to talk about is the balance of the game going slightly haywire in the recent patches. So the balance is referring to the power level of the units, and I personally feel that power creeping in gacha game is pretty common. But the issue in Guardian Tale is very obvious, is that every single time they introduce a new unit, this unit need to be able to win over some of the very OP units in order to have an impact in the meta. So take for example, when Future Princess was released, she was super duper broken, right? She can beat nearly any single unit in the meta, and it was super hard to deal with her unless you had a Nari back then, right? So that was one issue with Princess, and further on, they piled out all the power creep. So after that, we have Lilith, right? Being able to apply defense debuff, being able to win anyone within the meta as long as she's able to chain her skill, as long as she has sufficient stats. So after Lilith, we have many other units, right? We have Noxia, we have Arena, we have tons of other OP units. And I think the most recent culprit of this power creep is definitely Kamel. Kamel is this unit that is basically a must-have at this point. Being able to do Colosseum, being able to do Raid, being able to do Arena with him. So with Kamel, you can literally clear through the game mode. This is a good thing for free-to-play player or new players to the game because it's a hero that they can ride on to catch up to the rest of the game. However, the issue with Kamel is at the highest level, I think Kamel is really just way too powerful. He doesn't really have an answer, and it's just not fun to play against him because if you think that you have the chance, right? There are other issues such as connections and stuff, which I'll talk about later. Combining all the different facts of Kamel being way too powerful and all the different issues stacking up, that makes Kamel a super duper hard hero to deal with within Arena itself. And within Colosseum, you guys can see that Kamel is basically the next Future Princess. So it's either you want to use him or you lose to your opponent who uses him. And the issue here is that they don't really nerf any units within the game itself. They probably just gonna overpower Kamel, and that will introduce a Kamel version 2 or version 3 in the future, and that just means that you have way more overpowered units to deal with. And you guys can see that there are certain units that are not really that bad, but they're just not as impactful when you use them against the likes of Kamel, Arena, as well as Noxia, and they're not seeing as much use. So I think Yuze is one unit that is very underrated. She probably can do well if Kamel isn't so dominant. And we also have Mark II. So Mark II is okay. Personally, I think Mark II is not bad, but you guys can see that she's just not as impactful. So very little people actually run Mark II. And we also have Lucy. So Lucy is a great raid unit. So even if she doesn't see any use in Arena, she will still see some use in raid. So that's a good thing about Lucy. But in general, some units are meant to be Arena-centric, but they are kind of ousted by the overpowered units in the pool right now. So that's the problem I feel with power creep. With a unit such as Kamel that can do everything, certain units which are more niche to the Arena or more niche to the PvE aspect might lose their value due to how versatile and how powerful one unit can be. And yeah, that's probably one of the key examples of power creeping and balancing issue within Guardian Tales itself. And the second point is the connection issue. So connection issue does not just refer to the connection within Arena itself, because if you guys have been tuning into my stream, you guys should know that connection within the Arena is getting from bad to worse, and I'm not too sure about the problem there because it could be server overloading or influx of foreign players trying out the game on the global server for myself. So that's one thing that I realized personally. Arena is getting very, very laggy. And the other point of connection is connecting to the game itself. So when I use the game on the phone, I get random disconnects here and there. So I didn't really treat it too seriously. But when I do it on the emulator, if those of you guys have been watching my stream, you guys should also know that I have issues logging into the game through the emulator itself. So this issue didn't exist in the past, and it got from bad to worse, right? Sometimes you just need like 1 or 2 attempts, you will go in. Recently, I could take up to 20 to 30 minutes just to enter the game itself. So it's kind of outrageous in terms of, why can something that worked in the past have so much issue right now? So yes, they might say that, hey, emulator is not supported by Guardian Tales and stuff, but it's still a platform where people play the game from, so I honestly feel that they should do something about it. But I doubt they will look at this problem because emulator players ain't really the biggest part of their player base, and most of them should still be from the mobile aspects. So this is relatively minor, but the arena connection part is literally the biggest game spoiler, because arena is the super end game content for Guardian Tales, and it's probably the content that most people who have completed the story for a very long time spend their time on. So if your arena has such a bad lagginess issue, it's gonna spoil the game experience for a lot of players. And yeah, even if you have an amazing story, your PvP is really bad, people are just gonna quit the game and be super mad about it, because they're gonna face a lot of laggers and they're just gonna rage after losing to many laggers. And lastly, the biggest problem for this outrage bug is obviously the character design changes. So from this incident itself, we can see that the Korean players really love their waifus, and that's why we have been getting tons of waifus, because the main server, or rather the Korean server, the homeland server for Guardian Tales, they really love their female characters, and I don't think they should make changes to their female character design unnecessarily, because I feel that Guardian Tales character design is not overly sexified for selling boobas to you, because the characters all fit a certain theme, right? Even if people complain about Sohee being overly sexy, being a cosmetic character, but she has a beach theme, so her design is fit for her as a swimmer, as a lifeguard that wears a bikini on the beach. So that's one thing that I think they should continue doing with. I personally feel that the character design for Guardian Tales is okay, but if they need to unsexify the character to sell it to other servers, then I guess they can make version exclusive, or maybe they can introduce a tab to switch around for the character design. So maybe for the Korean server side, they can have like 2 character design, one where the Sohee is covered up and one where the Sohee is not covered up. However, I think this could be a bit troublesome, so they probably won't do it. So it's just a minor chat that I have, or rather a point that I have for this video. So yeah, just feel like talking about it. But you guys can see that, Korean players really love their boobas. And obviously there are other pointers such as the slow release of story mode, as well as the lack of new story, or even like good multiplayer contents. So yeah, these are stuff which I feel will take quite a while to change, or rather they really need some drastic actions to change. That's why the review bombing happened, and I'm really glad that this review bombing happened, because this just shows that people care about the game and people will rise up to the occasion to tell the developers what's the issue with the game. And yeah, it's good because it actually got Kakao to respond with a statement. So they just released a notice stating that they read all the different comments and statements of the current player base, and they are going to answer to these concerns with a notice, as well as let players know what is going to happen in the future. So I hope this update notice from Kakao on the 9th of November will be something that is satisfactory for players around the world, as well as players on the KR server. So yeah, I will get this covered, and thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about this whole saga, as well as whether or not you like the idea of boobas being changed within Guardian Tales itself. Do remember to like and subscribe in order to see more videos from this channel, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys!